Victor Wembanyama's draft reaction to going, or basically, he was a lottery ticket. He was chosen by the gods that also chose David Robinson and Tim Duncan back in the 90s for the Spurs. And the funny thing was his reaction, because when he saw San Antonio, his double pump in the fist, he's like, thank God I am not going to Houston, Charlotte, Detroit, hell, even the Portland Trailblazers, one of these horrible franchises. You want to know who sounds crazy too? Victor Wembanyama almost became a Washington Wizard. I'm pretty relieved. Now that I've said that, he is a San Antonio Spur. I'm sorry you guys to hear that. San Antonio has a French fan base from Tony Parker and Boris Diaw, but they also have they have Greg Popovich, who helped develop Tim Duncan into a top 10 player of all time. And while I think he needed Duncan, we've seen in the years since him develop DeJounte Murray into a player they got 4 first-round picks for. Keldon Johnson, one of the better young wings in the game. Devin Vassell into the same exact thing. We've even seen Jeremy Shohan, who was considered a reach with the 9th overall pick last year, far exceed everybody's expectations. But the one thing they lacked the entire time was a generational prospect. And they also had the worst defense in the league's history last year, too. And they bring in probably the best defensive prospect to the last maybe ever, because he's 7'5" and can move on the perimeter, hips that flip. And he's pretty quickly going to go to a team with a coach, stability, and pretty good teammate, really good teammates around him. They're all 23 years old or younger. This is the perfect landing spot for Victor. The fan base deserves it. They're a well-run team. They don't have really any dysfunction. And I'm just so happy for him that he's going to go to some place where he's not going to have the spotlight on him 24/7. People are going to keep a close eye on him. But when Zion went to New Orleans, people kind of stopped watching him by his second year. And by that point, he was an All-NBA player, but no one really cared because he was in New Orleans and they weren't a playoff team. With Victor this year, it's going to be very similar. He's going to a smaller, it's not a smaller market, but there's not that much attention to glamour on the outside nationally on San Antonio. So I think that's a much better destination than, say, him going to a place like New York or Los Angeles. They weren't in the running, but he could have went to Chicago. And if he went to She-Town, they would have had a mountain of expectations to make the playoffs as a rookie. And I don't think it would have been reasonable for him.
Yeah, no, I think it's quite possibly the best case scenario for Victor. I literally when I was watching it, I I bursted out laughing when the Spurs got the first pick because a light bulb went off in my head of, oh, of course it's the Spurs. Like we should have knew this the entire time that it was the Spurs that were going to get it. Um, you spoke about it from Robinson, the Admiral, to Timmy D, Tony Parker, Manu. And then hell, you forgot Kawhi Leonard. They were able to make and transition him into this elite offensive player, and that was their only kind of one dysfunction was Kawhi's problem with Pop and how the team doctors were handling him. But other than that, it's been quiet as a church mouse. Kind of very similar to the New England Patriots. That's why they both these teams and franchises get compared very often, especially in the last 20 plus years. But yeah, best case scenario for Wemby going to the Spurs. My only thing is, you named all those guys, John, right? And then I think you said their ages too. Very young team, very young team. It's very similar to the OKC Thunder, right? The one issue that could arise, and I think that is possibly arising for the OKC Thunder as well, is are you too young? Meaning, what I mean by that is all these guys are, their contracts are going to be come up, right? You're going to have to pay, a lot of money out there. You're going to have to pick and choose, right? And can you capitalize on that? And then eventually when those contracts come up, do you lose them for nothing? Or do you want to package some of them, package some of those picks, trade them away, get a superstar who is made right now? You can pair with Shea and Giddy and Chet maybe, and on the Spurs, Johnson and Victor coming in. Do you pair them? Because the Spurs have what? Was it 12 picks in the next 4 or 6 years or something like that? And they got a bunch of young players. So do the Spurs say, okay, and Pop's age, I'm not saying he's going to, he's in great health, I would imagine, but I'm just saying he's 75 years old. He's getting up there. Do they try to go very soon where they're like, all right, we have a bunch of these picks. We have a bunch of young players. Let's pick like 1 or 2 guys that we have now, keep them, trade some of the other young guys, package some of those picks, and get us a a superstar or star type player where we can now compete now? That would be my only question that could arise for these young
Julius
teams.
Randle.
A Jalen Brown. That's a great point, Brandon. That's why it's important to not hoard. That's why it's important to not hoard. God,
Yes.
no Julius Randle.
You know the thing is, I seeing that he's going to be picked by the San Antonio Spurs, and we can harp on how much it's a match made in heaven. The pressure on the young guy is out of this world, and being drafted specifically by this organization doesn't make it any better. While yes, you do have Coach Pop, now you're expected to make the impact that the David Robinson, that the Tim Duncan made immediately when they got drafted. So, you mentioned him in Chicago, how they would have playoff expectations in their first year. I think San Antonio is going to have immense expectations now. And while it's not going to be, they have to be title contenders, no, but they have to contend for the play-in now. They have to see, you're expecting this kid to not just probably be the unanimous rookie of the year. You're expecting this guy to carry your franchise for the next 10, 15 plus years and be a first ballot Hall of Famer. LeBron came into the league in an interview, I believe it was with Bob Costas, and Costas told him, the expectation for you is Hall of Fame or bust. If you don't make the Hall of Fame, you're a bust. John, you started the episode with talking about who he's being compared to, and if he's not any one of these three players you name, he's a bust, which is completely unfair. Because if this guy has a Hall of Fame career, wins himself a ring in San Antonio, he'll be a legend. But I'm worried about the expectations. I think San Antonio, we don't know how long Pop has in the game. You touched on, Brandon. He's 75 years old. He's closer to retirement than he is another 10 years of coaching basketball. So what kind of Victor Wembanyama are we going to see? Is it going to be with him and Pop for maybe 2 years at most? Are we going to get 5 years of him and Pop? Remember, head coaching is important. What's the perfect marriage for him? Right now, it's Pop, but in 2 years, is it going to be Pop?
The good news is that Pop's successor is going to be really deserving of the job. There's too much gravitas to the role, and the Spurs are a model. Outside of Kawhi and Josh Primo, more so, who we don't have to discuss on this podcast, they have been the model organization, and I just think San Antonio is the perfect city for France and France's biggest superstar. And now he's gonna go to a place where he's very raw, but they develop talent better than any team in the NBA. They've needed a center since Tim Duncan retired in 2016, and they had LaMarcus Aldridge at 4 in those years. So, look, I don't think the expectations will be that high. I mean, this was the number one destination for Wemby, and it was really destined to happen, I think.
Yeah, I just final thing for me is on Victor. I do agree. The pressure on this kid is immense. It is like 1,000 houses on this guy's back right now. It's I really don't know. I've seen highlights. And I know people can, and John has probably looked at the film a lot more than a lot of us have, but I think even John would say you have to take the film with a grain of salt because of the level of competition he's playing against. So it's going to be interesting how, you got to remember, LeBron James, like Justin said, LeBron came in and, God, what was his first stat line? What was it, 25?
20 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists.
Yeah. As an 18-year-old kid,